What's up everybody, it's RobinGaming here. So Until Dawn came out earlier this week and it's pretty much, if you think about it, the only real PlayStation 4 exclusive coming out this fall, with, you know, of course, only Uncharted the Nathan Drake Collection, which is a remaster, and Tearaway Unfolded, which I also don't really count as like a big AAA title or something. So a lot of people had put their hopes into this game, and I have to be very honest with you, I myself didn't really have big expectations for Until Dawn. I thought the game could end up being good, but I wasn't already a big fan of like the genre or something, the whole, you know, teen kind of horror movie style game that it was. I was not particularly looking forward to this game at all. Having played it now, I am definitely positively surprised. At the same time, it's not really, you know, too much to write home about or something. But I am positive about the game. Let me say that up front. Let's just get into it. This is really, once again, a game where you play it for the story, and therefore the game itself is just completely dependent on if the story itself is good. And that's also where I have a bit of, you know, trouble really deciding what I thought of this. Of course, I'm gonna quickly explain the setup to you. Until Dawn takes place in this mountain sort of area, very dark. It's, of course, it takes place at night, up until dawn, obviously, as the title says. And it tells the story of these 10, I think a group of 10 teens pretty much, that come together there in a big mansion, and two girls go missing eventually. Then the actual game itself takes place a year later. After that, the two girls have never been found anymore, but the group decides to reunite there and pretty much try to move on from the tragedy and stuff. And that's where stuff goes wrong, because it turns out there's like a psychopath killer all of a sudden who's trying to hunt for them. Some other things that don't seem to be right and really fall in place. The group ultimately gets split up. They all get in sort of, you know, trouble, of course, in a real horror style. You have to make choices, and depending on your choices, people can live, people die, and that's really what the game is pretty much about, right? Now, for me, the story, what was so controversial about it is that I'm gonna explain to you what happened, okay? So I streamed the game on Twitch and YouTube Gaming, and I did so in 3 streams in total of about 2 hours, I would say. The first time I did, I was not really too impressed. I thought the game started pretty slow. The characters itself were constantly making remarks that were kind of sexual in a way, and it was just kind of annoying to me, if you'd ask me. So yeah, I was not very very entertained by those first 2 hours. Then I played it again. All of a sudden things start going wrong. You know, people get into all sorts of trouble. Once again, you kind of like, you know, get into some nasty situations where your choices really depend what's going to happen further on in the game and stuff. And that's why I really liked it. Some pretty big set pieces and stuff. So that was pretty cool. Then at the end, however, and I don't want to spoil anything, because of course this is really an experience, as I said, that you play for the story, so I'm not trying to spoil too much, but near the end, yeah, things started to kind of fall apart again. They introduced a new element to it, and I was not really too big of a fan of that either. So in that way, I had really, you know, mixed feelings about the story of this game and the directions it went into ultimately. So although I did think it was enjoyable, it had its sort of like peaks and it had its downsides for sure. Then we get to the presentation. I can be very short about that. You know, it simply looked great. Like, the game itself looked awesome. The sound was done very well. There were a couple of jump scares in the game, which definitely got me very scared. As I said, I'm not really too big of a fan of this entire sort of genre, and I'm really easily scared by horror games. And this one did a good job at, you know, at most points. You know, there's a cool soundtrack that supports it and stuff. So presentation-wise, I can be very, you know, very quick about this. Super good. Then we get to the gameplay. Now, this game is super comparable to something like Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls, the Quantic Dream games. The biggest part of the game consists of just walking around, looking for items, collectibles, that kind of stuff, exploring the environments. And then there's also a lot of quick time events in there where, say you're being chased by a certain thing or whatever, you constantly have to mash certain buttons in order for you to make it out alive, hopefully. And, you know, if you don't do that, then things can definitely go wrong. As I said, there's collectibles for you to pick up, that kind of stuff, and making choices is also a big part where sometimes you're literally being put in a situation where you have to choose between if you want to save a character or not, and depending on what you do, that character can actually die. This is not really a spoiler in itself, because it's commonly known that all characters in the game can either live or die, so it's really all up to you and what, you know, how the story pretty much ends. So yeah, you know, in terms of gameplay, it's really, there's not a lot of freedom there. yeah, it's super linear, but I myself don't really mind that. I like these type of games. I personally loved Heavy Rain, and that's what I mean, is that because the gameplay is so insignificant and so basic, it really all comes down to the experience itself and to the story and presentation. Finally, let's quickly get to the value. So, contrary to what I heard on the internet, I heard this game could be beaten in like 10 hours by most reviews that I saw. I myself, I've seriously just counted how long I played it based on all my streams, and it took me a total of only 6 hours to beat the game. So it's really not that long, and I find it pretty interesting how this game is not really getting that much hate compared to, say, The Order, which I think was a longer game, to be honest, but got criticized very much for being short. That being said, I also noticed how choices in the end didn't really have as much of an impact as I thought, and I don't really want to get into spoiler territory here, but yeah, well, I thought I had made some really heartbreaking decisions sometimes. In the end, that turned out to not be the case, and really up until the end is where choices really start to matter at the same time. So that was just something I noticed, and therefore it also makes me say that replaying this game a second time, yeah, it's going to be worth it, and it's cool to see the different sort of death animations and situations you can get into. I also noticed how if you treat a certain person nicely, then that will kind of like have its consequences. If you don't, that will have its consequences too. So you really see that relationship between certain characters being different depending on the choices you made pretty much throughout the entire game, and that's cool. But the sort of like real big epic choices of who dies and who lives don't really have too much an impact until really the end. So in that way, I think this game, you know, it's 6 hours to beat, and then it's cool to play the second time through, but that's really pretty much it. And I've seen this game, to get to my conclusion, I've seen the game getting a lot of really high scores. I think on Metacritic it has pretty much a 79 or an 8 out of 10, which I think is a little too high. I thought the game was a cool experience, and especially me, I love this genre. I love the type of linear experiences where it's really not so much about the gameplay, it's about playing a movie or playing a TV show. That's what I love. I mean, Heavy Rain is still one of the best games I ever played, I would say, or at least of the last generation, because the experience I had there stayed with me forever, and I can still think of all the moments that I, that I encountered in that game. With this one, that is not really too present. I can think of about 2 or 3 things that happened to me that really made an impact, I guess, and that I still remember. But apart from that, I am pretty much thinking that, yeah, I'll play this game one more time through, and then I'm gonna be done with it. And in a year from now, I doubt it's really gonna have that much of an impact on me anymore, and that I'll be able to really say, oh yeah, Until Dawn, remember that game? So yeah, you know, it's a cool experience. Get it if you think it's worth it. It's $60 now still, so you may want to wait for a price drop if you're not really in the best financial situation. And of course, with so many other games coming out, I think you should probably think twice if you want to get this game. But nonetheless, it's good. It's just not of a level, you know, compared to all the other games probably coming out this fall. And that's just my personal opinion. I'm very honest with you about that. So I would personally give the game a 7 out of 10. Of course, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Did you play the game? What did you think of it so far? And for now, I'd like to thank you a lot for watching, and hope to see you again next time.